Okay. I know that you just stopped talking because I'm reading your lips, but I can't hear anything. Can you guys hear me?
I cannot
Yeah,
hear.
I can hear you, but not John.
I
Yeah,
can hear
we
everybody
can't
but
hear.
John.
Yeah, I don't. You're mute, and
Is
I
he
don't see
muted?
the mute button on John.
Can't hear. We can't hear you.
Mm-mm.
Can't hear you. But hello, everybody. we really can't hear you.
Not good.
No, we're like, oh, okay.
Okay, well.
So we don't know if the audience can actually hear us. Not sure.
It says we're live, so let's assume we're live.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll assume.
Oh, I can't hear John.
Nope, still can't hear.
No, we don't want to talk over you. We're like, this is beach blanket bingo.
Yeah.
Beach blanket bingo.
We can do, yeah, that dance.
You don't know where you're gonna land.
So I think they can hear us, just not John. I'm reading the comments on YouTube.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
So basically John's in a different place. He's not in the studio today, and
I wonder if he needs earbuds or something that will connect him to the pad, which then will feed into it. Maybe the microphone isn't strong. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you have headphones or earbuds?
He can read the chat, right? I said can't hear, but I didn't say anything else. John today is doing his iPad, and that is always a challenge when you switch up the technology of what you're using. So
yeah, he made time for all of us during his vacation, so that's a wonderful thing.
That exactly. He didn't have to do that, but he wanted to do some protecting the nest, and I feel bad talking over him when his lips are moving. Okay. Message in the chat. Let's see. John, do you have your phone? Okay.
I don't know if John can hear us either. It sounds like the people can. Oh no, they're saying 3 of the 4 can. It's just John that we can't hear.
Yeah.
Well, he's kicking off the vacation season. I don't think any of us have gone on vacation yet, but we're like SOS.
Is it getting warm for you guys? Is it vacation warm yet? Not here.
Well, no. while John's working on that, I couldn't help but laugh when I heard that there's another Chinese balloon in Hawaii. And I think most people are probably going to just let it go in one ear and out the other, because it seems like every day there's something and it's nonstop. So no one can catch their breath. And I think everyone's getting fatigue from everything. And with fatigue, it's so hard to get people when it's necessary to really care. And that's dangerous.
Exactly. That's one of the reasons that they try to put a million distractions going in a million different directions.
Yeah.
And so things fly into the rug, but people are, someone's keeping track of everything somewhere. That
when there's things flying at you on a constant basis, it feels like the boy who cried wolf, right? And then when you need for people to really like be on alert, they're gonna poo-poo it and say, well, I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if that's true. And then, that's dangerous for any country, for the citizens just to be like, what, because there are times that everyone needs to be privy and aware of issues that they may just start ignoring. So I think it's a dangerous game when everybody's throwing stuff at the wall, seeing what sticks, because then one day you're going to need everyone to listen because you're not actually throwing stuff at the wall. It's a really serious topic and no one's going to pay attention.
I think the balloon thing was kind of odd because, they kept saying China, China, China the whole time it went over. And then it turns out they were private balloons. And, and then they shot them down after they collected all the information. So, who got all that data? We don't know. But yeah, anyway, you're right. We don't want to just cry wolf.
Yeah. I mean, I deal with that. Like if my kids are arguing and then, it's not really big deal and they're both just kind of being mean. And so then I address it and then I get tired because I'm like, that wasn't, you guys can handle this. But then when it's big, I start treating it like it's not a big deal. And then they get upset. And then it's really when I do have to step in, I'm like, guys, I just wasted like, the last 10 times addressing this. And this is when you come to me for this. Not all of that, not something you can handle in 3 minutes flat because you talk it through. But this is huge. You can't, and it's hard to like, no, okay, it's serious now. No, wait, not now, but serious now. No, it's too much.
Well, it seems like we're pretty clear though at this point that it's twisted. It's not, nothing is what they say it is. We're just getting a story. And so yeah, it's easy to roll your eyes, I think, sometimes when it keeps coming at you. That's what you're saying.
It also looks like now the actual news is talking about the Biden laptop and that he's going to be called into court. I don't know the details. Lots of people are talking about it. It's on every station. So something must have happened to upset somebody.
Well, he
now
did
they're
announce
striking.
his presidency, and then everybody said, well, he's too old and his brain is gone. So, maybe this is just a graceful, well, not too graceful, a way out.
Could be. I'm wondering why all of a sudden MSM wants to talk about it and like act like, they just came onto the scene and it's just released, because everybody who's been asking and talking about this are now like, yeah, okay, what took so long? What's going on? So I figured there was an upset or split in somewhere or something
it just might
happened.
be the timing. I mean, this might have been all along that something would happen before the election to change things up because he's very unpopular. So, but he's not unpopular with Democrats totally. I mean, I've heard reasonable people who get all their information from MSN who think everything's fine and he's a great president.
Right. That's what I'm wondering about. I'm wondering about those people because then they turn on MSM and it's like night and day. It's a whole different world. They've been told it's not true.
Is the no truth or the no trust. They'll have their trust that they've tried to hang on to all this time. They're trying to hang on to it because they don't want to imagine the reality of it all not being true. But
right.
So this plays right into that.
We'll definitely have to be there for our friends who are struggling because that's something that when all of a sudden you go from trusting to what's going on here, that can tilt you so many different ways. So I'm not a I told you so person.
Right.
I'm a hey, what's going on? Oh yeah, that's so difficult when we hear about stuff that is just very unsavory. It's hard, and you got to keep the kids out of the room, and then you got to kind of figure out when were you deceived, how long have they known? Yeah, it's a whole hard process. Just let me know, where your struggle is. I'm struggling too. If you just say I'm struggling too, it makes it so much easier on them.
Well, I had a conversation with my sister the other day, and it was, at a certain point where a few years ago when I was like, well, my sister and my cousin who were being reasonable, I was like, well, they can't unsister me and they can't uncousin me. So I'm going to be feeding stuff to them on the side. They might not say anything or whatever. But so I had a conversation with her that I'll tell you about later, but one of the things that I was trying to explain to her was that as long as you look at like a two-sided issue from two sides, you cannot get to the truth. Okay, so it's like if you look at it like a coin if you're on one side of the coin, somebody can change something on the other side and you can't see it. And then when you get to the other side, somebody can change something on the other side, you can't see it. So the only way is to get a third point where you can see both sides at once. That's the only way you are going to see the truth. You will never see it from just standing on one side. You're missing too much. So it's
Absolutely.
there's so much of that, you know what I mean? And as soon as like, oh, trigger word, or that's the and talk about shells. Okay, this is one of the things that we're learning is that you have a shell of a not the kind of company that we say like a shell company, but like almost like, oh, Domino's Pizza, it was like this family owned and this pattern that they do. And then they come in, they change the recipe. It's not even the same thing, but they're like, since 1937, blah, blah. You know what I mean? So it's like almost like the same thing where like, the Biden thing, like whatever. And people are like, oh, some people, they just are not looking underneath the covers. You know what I mean? And we can't be that surfacey anymore. That's what we have to
Right.
learn.
This is why I've hated the algorithm so much and I have to break out of it often because I don't want to be put in that box where I'm in a bubble and I assume that I'm past the algorithm and that I'm hearing all sides. So I do have to go into areas where I don't agree with really the philosophy of what's being pushed, but just to see like what articles is everyone like, what are they being fed? What are they seeing? What is making them have this mind frame? Because if not, and something I was introduced to that I wasn't aware of, I don't want to go into shock or be like, wait, what is happening? So that's why I think one of the most dangerous things happening is the algorithm, because it puts us all the way one side or the other. And this middle ground, you have to kind of dance and use certain words because you can't use other words. And you got to try to appeal to both sides just to say a basic truth. And that's like, you have to like study what do I say in this paragraph so nobody tunes me out on either side because the truth is more important than a bias. So it's like, oh my gosh. And it takes so much that instead of just breaking out of the algorithm, figuring out what's being said and then being able to talk on their level, meet them where they are and discuss it from that point, which makes it easier. But it's so hard for people to break out of an algorithm, especially if they don't even know they're in one.
That's the problem. I think this is kind of the first time that I can remember where it's just so obvious that there's these separate realities that are completely separate. I think there was just, it wasn't possible to have that amount of control before until we got so involved in social media and so in all these little boxes and fences that could happen. And so this is the first time. So we have to do things like you're talking about to really get both sides and even know the language to talk to people. When I first started talking to people, I was so excited about figuring all this stuff out. And they just was like, whoa, such a, because they'd already been primed that these words mean, this person is a Russian infiltrator or whatever, the conspiracy theorists, all the names were right there. So the pre-priming of the arguments we've seen.
Yeah.
That.
Well, what's disappointing is when people look at sides like if they're black and white, like it's either this extreme or this extreme, rather than saying how many of our leaders spoken with the leadership of Ukraine. A lot of them. How many of our leaders spoken to the leadership of Russia? A lot of them. How many times has our country worked with both sides? A lot. So therefore, we're all splitting into camps when the people who legislate and the people who are elected to be on committees, go to embassies, do trade, import, export, go into business together, buy properties, they're all very familiar with one another. But when they're struggling for power, we're all supposed to be told this person's bad. Now in 6 months, we might be friends with them again, and you got to turn off that hate we told you to, push out. And then you have to just go with the flow, but just trust us. But you're not going to know when that's going to change dramatically. And you can't have your heart into it, but you have to have your heart into it where you protect the narrative by all means necessary. But whenever we change the narrative, you have to just go with the flow. Don't ask any questions because you're going to ruin everything. And it's like, we can't be part of your cheerleading squad if we don't know the name of the team. We don't know what's going on. We don't know what play is being played, and we don't know what sport is happening right now. We don't even know how to get to the ball field. Like, I don't like they change their minds on who's the enemy, who's the friend, not only with each different presidency, but within one administration. It goes from one extreme to another, and it's hard to keep up. So they should never be down on their citizens for just going with what they've always thought, or, you know, because you have people that move. I mean, we're the melting pots. You literally have people who live here from both countries and who have families from both countries. And then they push ancestry. So everyone knows their ancestry. And then they find out they have like a certain lineage and a type of race within their race. And then they have an affinity for that race. But then if your country says they're bad, you're like, well, I guess that part of my family lineage is crap. And this melting pot doesn't matter. And now we're just one idea of a country. So it's very, like, I don't think the leaders understand that. I don't think they grasp like how difficult it is to be a citizen and want to care about your country and support your country, but have to jump through hoops to understand at any given time why, what, when, and how. And it's exhausting.
Well, with this big switch, you know, that we've been talking about the Biden laptop for a long time, so it's not a surprise. But what are your friends? How are they reacting? Have you talked to any of them, either of you, about people that are of the blue persuasion?
I just want to say I'm quite sure nobody flipping knows about it still.
That's what
I bet you.
I
bet
haven't
you
heard anyone
$1,000.
talking about it.
About
Yeah,
what? About what?
the Biden laptop.
All I know, this is so with a lot of my liberal friends, what they have been reaming about and going to town on is, I can't believe RFK is running. This is so dangerous. This is the most dangerous thing that he could have ever done. And I thought, well, isn't he a Democrat? Like, and then I'm wondering, oh, is this the pushback because they see so many people within the party not accept anybody else who's running? And so then this is kind of to level it out by throwing this laptop thing in the news now. I don't quite understand. So I think they're still reeling over RFK, but I have a feeling these next couple of days when it's on MSM, there's going to be a lot of like struggle of trying to figure out what's happening. And it doesn't help that everyone will be kind of in the dark because a lot of these families share, like when their kids are in school, everyone has time to talk and do things. When summer hits, there's vacation, you're always with your kids, you don't have time. So people will feel more on their alone and just in their family unit during summer, when a lot of this crazy will seem to be coming down the pike. So you won't have the reinforcement of your like close-knit group unless you seek it out, take time, go to events. But, you know, and that's what makes it difficult, because if they drop a bunch of news right before school comes out, you know, there's no more carpool talk. There's no more standing on the playground watching your kids or going to school events. You know, there's no more, like, there's a lot of things that you're not congregating with unless you personally get a babysitter or you go out with them. And then it's only going to be a handful of people at a time. So it really, I think during that time, everyone feels so secluded that they spend so much time with their friends that it's not until the school year starts back up and fall starts back up, everyone's more communicative.
Well, you know what? You know where I heard it though? On AM radio. And so I think it's people in the media, like not necessarily the huge big mainstream media, but the local like radio stations and like, you know, sort of AM that are trying to be not the like main controlled thing anyway. You know what I mean? So those will have, you know, trickling effects.
I think the RFK thing that you mentioned, Amber, about the reaction being how dangerous it is. I think early on when all this was going on, and I tried to talk about RFK to people that were Democrats that I thought would have respect for him, but he has been so maligned in the MSM press for so long that, you know, he's just got all the bad names associated with him for people that have been paying attention to that side of things. So this probably is a huge shock.
What seems weird.
I'm glad that he's running and, you know, and he's doing so well. So I think there is a shift that's happened that more people are awake that he has 18%, but maybe a lot of those are people in the middle that have liked him all along.
I'm wondering why. So when I grew up, the Democrat Party was always known as the hippies, you know, the ones who are like natural medicines. Yeah, well, natural medicines, no war, you know, community, and not running to pharmaceuticals. If you have a fever, you sweat it out. And then the more conservative side was like, trust your doctor. You know, they know what's going on. And the more conservative side was like, hey, don't use it. Like, I don't care if you use chemicals on my lawn, you know, just do what you have to get the weeds out. Where the Democrats are more like, could you not use chemicals and could you just manually get the weeds out? I mean, I know this firsthand from our landscaping company. And then all of a sudden it changed. And it was the weirdest thing going into the conservative neighborhoods. And they're like, I don't want those chemicals. I don't want this. And we're like, okay. So we were excited thinking everybody is going to go non-chemical, no more Roundup. This is great. But then we saw the ones who used to be persnickety was like, oh, just weed eat it. And if you have to do brush be gone, fine. If you have to do Roundup, fine. Just don't do it everywhere. But it wasn't all of the Democrat Party. It was just the ones who typically were peace, were now something changed. And then that's when I knew definitely we were in a huge algorithm. And it was mostly the ones that were very active on social media versus the ones that weren't. So the Democrats who are never on social media and they're older, they still want you to pull up those weeds by the roots. They don't want chemicals. They don't want war. They very much so want to handle something naturally.
Yeah, I have noticed, though, they are terrified of climate change, and they bought that hook, line, and sinker. The old peaceniks, the old hippies, they are really afraid the animals are dying and that we have to give up mowing lawns and everything. You know, they're all buying electric cars, and that one issue has taken root in that demographic that you're describing.
What they need to do, instead of looking at it as climate change, like there are definite things that need to be addressed. Like Lake Mead is at its lowest levels. So anybody in Arizona or Utah or Nevada, they're going to have struggles with this water issue. Also in California, because there's nine states that are affected by Lake Mead, and it's been at its lowest level ever. Now,
that's changed because they've had their biggest rainfall in the history of mankind this winter, and it's completely changed now. So,
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So the level's gone up?
Well, I don't know about specifically Lake Mead, but I know the snow levels are just off the charts in California. They just, they got so much snow in Southern California that people were dying in their houses. They couldn't get out. I mean, this was up in the mountains, but it never had that much snow before. It was.
So I'm wondering, do you think someone is pilfering water from Lake Mead or redirecting it and nobody knows? Because it's, I haven't heard of any lack. Like last year they had heavy rains. There's been a significant amount of snow and rain in these last 4 or 5 years. So the fact that it's going down
way more this year.
Right. But the fact that it's going down seems like something sneaky is going on, because it wouldn't be actually environmental. It could be man.
Up until this year it was going down because the water table had dropped, and I think that a lot of the runoff from the dams and stuff, they were letting it go. It was created, the low
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's where they could push back, stop with the climate change, and go after those who are trying to manipulate it to make it look like climate change, where they mess with things and they don't properly deal with them, like not burning off the underbrush or not actually addressing the areas that need to be cleaned up in the forest, which will cause forest fires, as well as around, if they're not allowing levels to go up and they're, not allowing that water to filter in, that's purposeful to scare people and tell them it's climate change, when that's in their power not to allow that to happen to begin with.
Well, I think that a lot of people don't understand how much of it is climate manipulation and how long this has been going on. And, since we're conspiracy theorists, we've been watching this and, watching the change and seeing what's happening. But it is just shocking how many people can look up and see a plaid sky and just say, oh, yeah, that's just contrails, that's just the jets. People that are smart people. It's shocking. It's really shocking. It's like certain things become invisible. And then the weather that we're seeing, these extreme weather events that look like weather warfare that we've been hearing about for a long, long time. It sure looks like that to me. That it's invisible.
And didn't another train just derail?
It seems like there's one every week. I don't know. There's a lot of them. Yeah. Where did you hear that a new one? Yeah.
I don't know, because after that I took a picture of a map of all of them, so I'm not totally sure which was like the latest one, but it's the way I see it right now is that it's hard to say there's something awesome going on, you know what I mean? I always do, but I believe that we're in a very controlled demolition, and that also the evil ones they have a few cards left, and they are fighting to the death. So
Yeah.
it's the trajectory that we've been on since 2016 is, election wise, knocked the evil ones off of their plan. So yes, they are under attack, but this is not going the way that they planned it. And you'll hear me reference, you guys probably did already, but 2016 is one thing, 2014 is another that we probably need to tease out more fully at a different time or periodically. And 2012, it's all connected to, because that was the end of this like 5,000 year whatever Baptung in the Mayan calendar. And so like what we are experiencing is kind of like the fireworks from the world that like just ended, if that makes any sense.
Well, you also look back at 2012 about the Smith-Mont Act. This is when we were allowed to be lied to. I mean, that's the issue, is that I've never understood, especially with countries or leadership, why they assume it'll build trust whenever they're putting out chaos or craziness, and that somehow everyone will just get it psychically and they'll just go with the flow. And if they don't, they're bad people, rather than understanding actual human behavior and sociology and what being deceived or being confused actually causes in their citizenry. And so if they were looking for people to go lockstep, what they actually did causes the opposite of lockstep. It causes like a shuffle, walking backwards, sideways, spinning in circles. It's like herding cats at that point, because no one knows what's real and what isn't. And by the time they think something is true, they find out it wasn't true. And then, they just tune out. And then how do you get people to march in lockstep if nobody's listening to you? They've just decided all they hear is wah, 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 and they don't care anymore. And so I think that's, something that when people just decide we're going to do this and we'll just trick them, that's why it's, there's a lot of things that no one can really account for, and they really can't plan for, because human behavior, you can study all of the sociology you want, but basically if people are asked to live in an untruth or live where, things are not open and they can't really speak about it, it's not going to go well for the ones who are causing that, because people are very unpredictable and they're not going to follow lockstep. That's just the way that it goes.
Well, but it did happen in the USSR. It is happening in the CCP, and people don't like it. We saw that. And the USSR collapsed, but I think, I don't know, it's hard to know, not ever having been there, what it's really like. But it seems like there's still a lot of election shenanigans, and Putin always wins.
I think
So
it's
I think
different.
there's manipulation.
I think it's different with places like China and Russia because they're not a melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's pretty much a cultural bond,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a national cultural bond versus America that's a melting pot. So you have all kinds of different people coming from all kinds of different governments, some that have been burnt and came to America hoping that they wouldn't go through the same thing. And you're wanting all these different ideals, cultures, languages, and peoples to all go lockstep, and they don't even tune in because, when they notice they can't speak without being censored, or there's like hyperbolic rhetoric on the news rather than just reporting the facts, it's now opinion. To them, that reminds them of the country they came from.
Exactly.
And that's going to cause them to absolutely rebel immediately. Whereas other countries, they can make their people conform very quickly because, and if you look at all the countries that are rebelling, they've had a big, huge influx of immigrants, or they're multicultural. And that is more difficult than a group of people who are culturally connected, because they look at each other like, we have to support this, we have to support our system, we have to do this, and they're more willing to go along.
But there are different waves of the immigrants, and I think the ones that have been here for many, many generations, a lot of them have forgotten that, and they're angry at the government on one level, that they're willing to become communists. They say that, the kids do, especially. They've been, and they don't say, I pledge allegiance for liberty and justice for all every day. Like, we have that bond. Anyone that had to do that every day, it sinks into you, and then it becomes more outrageous when you see, that it's exactly what's not happening at all.
Yeah, I think that's always dangerous. Imagine all of a sudden someone going into some of these old countries that have been there forever, and they tell them, you can't appreciate your country or your flag. And they start to have this undertow of people saying, oh, this is crappy, and our flag is stupid, and this is stupid, and we're horrible. That's very difficult for people to deal with. And so I don't think they took into account when they said, we're just going to destroy this country, watch, and we'll just get them to join along, because they didn't understand the spirit of the American people. And that's something that, that most people in the world know comes out of people here, and I think they thought we would be too divided culturally and spiritually to not understand that things are just not right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is just a sense we feel, but some people don't feel it, and that's the big question. Why can't you feel this is weird? But I think they are starting to feel it now. There's something is not right.
Well, there's the thickness in the air is either you're paying attention to things in a detective like way, or you're letting somebody mentally and emotionally sometimes push you around. So that's the real thing of trying to figure out, are you really on the path? And in that same conversation with my sister, another thing that I said was, we are, I said something about, I was saying something about the rainbow flag. And I said, there might be a gay person who sees this flag and says, at one time, maybe this represented me, or I thought it did, but now it doesn't. I'm folding it up. I'm getting rid of it, And she said, well, what if, in reference to something I had said about the United States flag, she said, well, what if people, that flag did, XYZ them as a community? And I was like, that flag does not represent a country with a constitution. You know what I mean? So it's nothing. So it's like, it is kind of in a way like a capture the flag type thing. It's like, if we have our American flag, we have our American ideals and our constitution that is respected around the world, and we're going to fight for that. So yeah, some people have trashed it and done some bad things in the name, of course, but it's like, we need to keep what we have, which is the freedom under the Constitution, together in that unified thing. And if people are in a position where they don't understand, they can learn.
Yeah, I agree. Imagine us making a protecting the nest flag. We went around and we told everybody they had to have it everywhere. And anybody who pushed back, we said,
Yeah.
oh my
We would,
God, if you don't let us have it, you know,
it's cultish.
yeah,
Cultish.
it's like, why would you not want this in every classroom and in your bedroom? And if you don't wear the ribbon, you can't walk in this parade, and like just crazy stuff, all because they wouldn't carry our flag. It's like, protecting this is not something you put on a flag, maybe a coffee cup. Maybe it's something you tune into, and then maybe it's something you start to do in your house, depending on your house and how you see fit to manage your family and how to handle difficult times. It's not really our belief system or what we're doing, and what we've chosen to do is not something to be pushed on people as if it's a new religion. And I think that's really the issue as well. It would be like us complaining about all the other flags, and then we start shoving our flag down everybody else's throat. That's very weird.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like the difference between equality and equity, and just all the twisted language. Yeah, it doesn't mean you get to dictate.
Yeah.
Yeah. The force. We don't and that's a pattern too. It's like any of us throughout these past few years, when you notice that this idea or this whatever is like really pushed on every single thing, then you can automatically know, oh well, forget, that's another thing that they ruined that one too.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of people put it's so hard to look at someone clinging to something, outside this country, and like wearing a pin that represents a whole other group. And most of the people who do it have never been there, and they really know nothing about the history, and they know nothing if they even agree. It's just something that they were told, this is very important, so therefore it becomes everything. And in that manner, they're kind of throwing away the the needs of their own country, like infrastructure, bridges, and where's this money going, and why am I hitting this pothole that's been here for 3 months? Like, what is happening? And why are the schools, so dysfunctional in some of these areas, and why is our graduation rate so low, and why do we have insider trading in our legislative body, and why have so many congressmen been in jail or had to file for bankruptcy and have such bad credit they can't even get a credit card? Like, what is going on? Why do they have DUIs? Like, what's happening? Like, that's what we should be looking at. But instead, we're waving the flag of another country, saying, this shows patriotism. No, what shows patriotism is that we keep our Constitution safe, and we keep our leaders in line, and we have them serve the American people first. And then after that, we see that, like, maybe that's the example the rest of the world needs. Right? Instead of us not being a good example and then going out and telling everybody how they should be, then that causes those countries to not listen, because they say, well, look at your country. It's in the shambles. I mean, that's irresponsible to do. Not cleaning your own house before you go and demand everyone else's house is clean. It's backwards way of doing things.
Well, John has joined the chat. He said he's off camera. So he had talked about us talking about JFK, or RFK Jr. Sorry, I got initials wrong. But I think that that is an interesting topic, because I think, Trump is a very divisive person, and so is RFK. But he is really I've heard his speeches, a couple of his speeches recently, and he's working harder than anybody, I think, to try to unite everyone. What do you guys think?
So for me, it's more difficult because he's married to Cheryl Hines, and she's very, 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 very left, and she would not let anybody come to an event at their house unless they were vaccinated. So
Is she like the Hines, Carrie Hines?
I don't know.
I don't know his wife.
I don't know. But she was married to Larry David for a while. And then she left Larry
He
David
was.
and married RFK.
I thought he was aware.
Well, the issue is like RFK, his whole family was vaccinated with this last one, and she wouldn't allow people to come to an event at their house unless they received it. So for me, it was like, well, like that's not good, because then people can push back against that. They can argue, well, you're LARPing or you're pretending, but you're okay with no one being able to come to your house unless they were. Those are the kind of things that are like, well, I think he needs to get out in front of that issue, because that's going to keep going, because there's even video of him saying that he believes in vaccines before this happened.
Yeah, I mean, he said that all along, actually. But, I think he's also said they should all be tested, which they haven't been since 1986. And he's been very, very vocal about that. And I think it would be a really different program if, the testing had happened for the children's ones and for all these new crazy ones. They wouldn't pass the tests. We know that. We've seen what the reality is of what's in them. And he has pushed really hard. I don't know what can you say about somebody's wife? I think.
Well, yeah, I know. I think I
Yeah.
would need to know about his foreign policy. I would need to know about where he stands on what's going on today, where he is different on what Biden is doing versus what Trump would do. I need to see, or hear more about his just really foreign policy stance. That's super important.
Mhm.
And economic, that's really important. And if he's going to push for a one world government, or if he is going to push for America First policies.
Yeah, I think he's clearly come out as, not pushing for the one world corporate idea. He's been very articulate about that. But there's certainly questions about, the Green New Deal. I don't think he's for the whole Green New Deal. I know he's for clean water. I mean, there's certain parts of cleaning up the environment that are obvious. But I think you're right. He does have connections, deep connections, even maybe to Robert Malone. I don't know.
Yeah, he does.
People that are.
Yeah, those are my questions. Is like who is he close to, and is he going to support like the Paris Accords and the climate agenda, and just go light on it, and then slowly over time, since we've already joined, he's like the slow transition into deeply going into it. I think that's where I have so many questions. I'm a populist person, that we're laborers. And so it's very hard to be part of an establishment that you're never invited into, because you're looked down upon because you are a laborer, because, you are not considered upper class, and you're just not in tune with how they see things should run. And when they do things, it ends up hurting your bottom line in your household, because the things that you go through, unless you have a president who understands how a populace thinks, it's very hard to even be heard or cared about. You just kind of disappear, and you don't matter when you have someone who's heavy establishment. So that would be another question. Is he more establishment or
crazy
populist?
that is, because the Democrats always took the position of being labor, but it's completely shifted to corporate something. This flip has happened slowly, the trading places. And it's hard to wrap my head around it sometimes and remember.
Well, that's that two-sided thing again. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, we're over here, over here. Oh, we're against them. Oh, now you love us. You know what I mean? So
it's the danger of that algorithm.
It is.
Yeah.
And I tend to like RFK's body language. As far as president material, nobody gets my vote besides President Trump, first of all. But anybody who would call themselves a Democrat at this point, I would have to be suspicious about that, because I don't love the Republicans either, but if somebody was like truly, I felt like independent and just had to maneuver through those departments like President Trump did. But I don't know. Like I said, the body language always is my final opinion on someone. So I tend to think that he has good energy. But other than that, the jury's out.
Mm-hmm. Wasn't Trump a Democrat for a while?
Yes, he was. No,
Yeah,
he was.
he,
Yeah,
he
but
almost
It was a
ran for
while
Democrat.
ago.
Yeah.
yeah. And I think the reason why I can't say that I think Biden is better than RFK is because RFK, the Kennedy family has been attacked. You know, whether or not people think it's deserved or not, or people don't like them, it's the fact that we live in a country that's supposedly not a third world country and not, run like a crazy place that actually will go after and off significant people in elected office and that are actually making a change, and then you actually have people who are being corrupt in your face and doing very perverted and horrific things, and they slow walk it and they make excuses for it, and sometimes those people are never held accountable, and just the ones who have a different philosophy or seem to be listening to world leaders that others don't want, then it's perfectly acceptable to just kill them in front of everybody all over the world. And I think that's where I'm sensitive to the Kennedy name, not because I would agree with everything they stood for, but because the absolute injustice and craziness of some of our presidents being shot. It's like a third world country. It's not normal. And people have normalized it. Like shooting Reagan, like that wasn't okay. Shooting Kennedy, that's not okay. Shooting Lincoln, that's not okay. Like these are not okay. We won't even go to a third world country and actually take out the leader because you have to bomb the whole country, not just the leader. And then if you say, well, why didn't you just take the leader? Well, we can't do that. Well, why not? That's what they do here when they just
They
off
try to
somebody.
get
Like that's
the hearts and minds of all the people. Now, John has asked us a question from the chat. What about Shiva? What do we think about Shiva? Who
he's
has
going to town
he's put
on
his hat in the
RFK.
ring.
Well,
I love his message. I love lots and lots of things about him, but I have a hard time listening to him. I don't know what it is. And maybe that's reading the
he's
energy or something. But
he's been going
everything he
after
says, I love.
RFK. Like he and RFK are
Yeah.
going at it.
Oh yeah, he
They do
does
not like
not
each
like
other.
RFK.
Because
Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
very snarky. I think he
Mhm.
has a snarky way of
Yeah,
like
I think you're
presenting
right.
things.
He is. There's a snarkiness that just rubs me wrong, but there's so many things to like
He's
about him. So
curt.
that
He's very curt
yeah,
with how he
Yeah,
and matter of
yeah.
fact.
and sort of a boring presentation, I guess, or it's just goes monotonous.
Clinical. It's clinical.
Yeah, or
It's
there's
very just
something
like
like that. Mhm.
so some people use emotion and their linguistics give you a visual. His is like you're reading fact in a book or like bullet points put out very curt. So it's like
Mhm.
the teacher or the
Right.
professor who's teaching you something you need to know because it's important. And so he's reminding you, like, don't be stupid, listen to this. Like you're ridiculous if you don't. And it's very just point, 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 point. And so you're being fed that and it's kind of aggressive, but not like loud or screaming. It's just in your face. I'm going to say it as bluntly as possible, and you can take it or leave it. You don't even have to listen to me. You can turn me off, but you don't expect me to change because you don't like what I'm saying. He's very much so that.
Well, I absolutely love his cytosolve, though. I think the cytosolve and the layering of the different compartments of stuff is so key to so many things. It comes up in my mind often, like, oh, Dr. Shiva's cytosolve would be perfect for that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
just his knowledge of Ayurvedic healing and herbs, and he knows so much from his grandparents, and that's such a big part of him, and I just adore that.
I love like he just took a basic strawberry. He did almost an hour and a half long podcast on the amazing benefits of strawberries. And then he said, we'll get to other fruits later. And I missed some of the other ones, but good grief. If he's that intricate on a strawberry, and when he starts to study something and he communicates with you, you're not going to walk away dumb or just like only getting a brief summary. You're going to know that in and out. I've never looked at strawberries the same again. I mean, really, they're so so beneficial. But just listening to him, you're drawn in, and then you're like, I knew strawberries were great, but my God, they're amazing.
Yeah. And just also the way, the complexity issue of the not so obvious establishment, is that what he calls it? That's just so wonderful. It really makes you look at things deeper than what's obvious. And that's what we all have to do to try to unravel this big ball of worms, Gordian knot.
I will tell you, he was super patient. This is a very funny story. So I was listening, Mike Lindell, Pillow Guy, he does this interview with Shiva. And this is very funny. And Mike Lindell's getting so excited, right? And he just keeps cutting people off. And he's talking over. He's getting excited. And then he would ask Shiva a question. Shiva will be in the middle of answering it. And he gets right to the point where it's like, this is the part of the answer you want to get. And they'd come in, well, then tell us about this. And he'd be like, patient. And then he would tell about that. But I got really upset at Pillow Guy, like really upset, because he was about to share that during his election, he was kicked off of Twitter. He took them to court. And he was about to tell the audience on Mike Lindell's, which was a ton of people were listening and they needed to know it because it was about the voter issues. And he said, secretaries of states, this is what he had said on a former podcast, that secretaries of states were the ones who could tell Twitter or anybody on social media when it came to voting to get rid of it or to cancel that person. So the Secretary of State in the state he lived got rid of his platform because they said what he said about voting was untrue. And so during the crux of his campaign, they kicked him off the main platform. And before he was able to share that, Mike Lindell jumps in, says, let me tell you this. And then he starts taking over the conversation about the things that he's seen. And Shiva just kind of sat there, and then it went to the next person. I was like, "Oh, good Lord,
that's
Pillow
really
Guy.
too bad because he
got been quiet so he could finish that.
He got done all that research and found those great big brochures on exactly how the government does that and undermines freedom of speech so purposefully. He just had it down pat, and
he was cut off. And I was like, he was almost there. Oh my gosh, everyone needs to know, because to this day, people who have been looking into the lot of issues that we're seeing with what's happened, they still don't know, and they're knee deep in it, like going over it, meeting with other people that are pushing for integrity in our election system, and they still don't know those very important points, that it wasn't just some fact checker or like the censor or like it triggered an algorithm in AI. It literally, all they do is like push it, anything that has election on it gets sent to the Secretary of State. And if they say no, they are the ones censoring, and nobody knows that. And if people knew, then they would push back to their Secretary of State and say, are you trying to take away my freedom of speech? And once they were called out, they would stop using that power. But, those people still to this day, to this day, I'm telling people, they're like, really? And then it's hard to find the clip of his original podcast where he shared it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's been obscured.
Well,
although he has his own website, so he can protect himself a little better, I think, than the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, I know that we're about to turn into a pumpkin in a minute. Here's John. But I just want to highlight, yes, the Secretary of State, super important. They were a key factor in the bank robbery. Hi, John.
Yes.
You can talk sign language.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
It's John.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, we hear you.
Okay.
Yay.
Thank you so much for letting us chat on your show, John, while you're on vacation. We really appreciate it.
Wait, did you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah.
It's cutting in and out a little, but
yeah.
That's all you had to do is let us rant.
Yeah, and if everybody tonight...
I am so happy that I did. It was a great show, ladies. Thank you so much. And look forward to getting back together soon. And boy, I'm looking forward to, just thinking about what we've been talking about tonight. You did a great job, and thanks for covering for me. And all right, peace and out.
Okay. Thank you. Bye, guys.
bye, everybody.